Sit for a moment with this. You walk to the window in the morning. The light comes through the curtain, and the edges of the garden no longer arrive cleanly. The fence is soft. The bird feeder blurs into the tree behind it. You blink twice, you rub the corner of your eye, and the world sharpens for a breath, then drifts again. You have started holding the newspaper a little farther out. You have started keeping a second pair of glasses in the kitchen drawer because the first pair is never where you left it. If you want to understand why your eyes have begun to soften at the edges after 60, the answer is not in another bottle of drops on the bathroom shelf, and it is not in stronger reading glasses. The answer is in something my grandfather kept in a clay jar on a shelf above the stove for as long as I can remember. A small red berry the old masters in our mountains have used for over 2,000 years to nourish what they called the inner light of the eye. Hello, friend. Come in. Sit. I have something to share with you today that has been quietly carried through my family for many generations. What you are about to learn could give you back the small things that make a life feel like yours. Threading a needle without leaning so close. Reading the recipe card your mother wrote in her own hand. Watching the face of your grandchild across the dinner table without that soft fog that has begun to sit between you and the people you love. And the reason most doctors at the eye clinic will not speak to you about this is not because they are hiding anything from you. It is because their training keeps their hands on the lens of the eye and rarely travels inland to the liver, the blood, and the belly, where the old texts say the seeing truly begins. The appointment is 15 minutes. The drops come in a small white bag. The food on the shelf above my grandfather's stove is nowhere in their guidelines. And yet, this is the food that repairs what the drops only soothe. My name is Jian Chen. For over 50 years, I have practiced the old healing in our small village in the mountains of Sichuan province, where my family has tended to the sick for many generations. I began at 14 years old, sitting on a low wooden stool beside my grandfather while he ground bark and root and berry into a powder. He kept in jars marked with characters older than the village itself. He told me something on a winter morning when I was perhaps 16. He said, "All disease begins in the belly, and what we see with our eyes is only the last story the body tells. The belly," he said, "is the soil. Everything that grows in the body, including the clarity of the eye, depends on what the soil holds." Modern researchers are now slowly arriving at the same understanding. The gut wall, the inflammation it controls, the nutrients it allows the body to absorb. All of these decide how well the small vessels behind your eye will work in your 75th year, your 80th year, your 90th. The laboratories are now confirming what the old monks of our region observed in a single season of careful watching. Researchers in Sydney followed nearly 4,000 adults over a decade and found that those who ate this small red berry regularly held back the most common form of age-related vision declined by close to 40%. 40%, friend. The old masters would have only smiled and poured another cup of tea. They had watched the village elders of our mountains read their letters by lantern light at 90 years old for as long as anyone could remember. This is not a new bottle of drops. This is not a surgery. This is a food my grandmother kept in a jar above her stove for 57 years. There is one part of what I am about to share that will surprise 9 out of 10 people watching, and the order matters. Each piece builds on the one before it, like stones laid into a path, so please stay with me to the end. Before we walk further into this together, I want to ask you to do one small thing for me. Leave a comment below and tell me your age, and tell me one thing your eyes used to see clearly that has begun to soften. Is it the small print on the medicine bottle? The color of the leaves changing in the fall? The face of someone you love across a long table? I read every single comment on this channel, and what you share with me shapes the videos I make for you in the months to come. In this video, I am going to show you the specific Chinese food my grandfather kept above his stove and exactly how he prepared it for the eyes. I will share the morning soak the old masters used, so the medicine inside the food would actually reach the small vessels behind your eye. I will give you the 3 companions that double the work of this food, including the one bitter root my grandmother added to her evening pot that the laboratories have only recently understood. And I will give you the master practice, the single most important thing I can offer you for your seeing after 60. Before we go further, may I ask you a small favor? If something I share today helps you, take 2 seconds and subscribe. So many of the elders who write to me did not realize they had not yet subscribed, and they thought they had. This is not for me. This is so more grandmothers and grandfathers find this work the way you have found it today. Now let me bring you to the food itself. The eye is a garden. The clarity you remember from your 42nd year, when you could read a road sign across a wide field, depends on the small vessels that water that garden. After 60, those vessels begin to thin. The macula at the back of the eye, the small patch of tissue responsible for the center of your seeing, slowly loses 2 pigments the body cannot make on its own. They must arrive from the food. They are called lutein and zeaxanthin, and the most concentrated source of them in the natural world, far above kale or spinach or any leafy green from the supermarket, is the small red berry my grandfather kept on his shelf. The Chinese name is goji. In the West, it is called the goji berry, or sometimes the wolf berry. By age 70, most people have lost close to 45% of the macular pigment they had at age 40. This is why the small print begins to fade. This is why the edges of the garden soften. Researchers came to a province not far from ours with their notebooks, and they found what my grandmother already knew in her kitchen. Over 90 days, adults who ate roughly a small handful of these berries each morning saw the pigment density at the back of their eyes rise by 26%. The old masters were not surprised. They had watched the village elders read by lantern light for centuries. Now why this small berry and not another? The lutein and zeaxanthin in most foods sits inside cell walls. The older gut struggles to break open. In the goji berry, those 2 pigments arrive bound to a special fat the body absorbs almost completely, even at 70 and 80 years old. My grandfather called this fat the carrier. Without the carrier, the pigment cannot cross from the belly to the blood to the eye. The garden cannot be watered if the hose is blocked. Here is how my grandfather prepared this food, and how I prepare it still. Every morning before the sun is fully over the ridge, you will need 2 heaping tablespoons of dried goji berries. Look for berries that are deep red, almost the color of old wine, soft to the touch, not hard or dusty. The brittle, bright orange ones have sat too long on a shelf, and the carrier fat has gone weak. Place the berries in a small bowl. Pour over them about half a cup of warm water, not hot, not cold, warm, the way water feels when you wash your face in the morning. Let them sit for 15 minutes. The berries will plump, the water will turn the color of a sunset. Drink the water first, then eat the berries slowly, one at a time, perhaps a dozen across a few minutes. The water carries the most absorbable pigment of all. You should do this every morning before any other food. In the first week, you may notice nothing. In the second week, your eyes feel less tired by the late afternoon. By the end of the 3rd month, many of the patients I have walked with through the years tell me the small print on the medicine bottle has come back to them. Let me tell you about Eleanor. She was 73 when she came to me, a retired school teacher from Cedar Rapids, Iowa, who had spent 41 years grading papers by the lamp on her kitchen table. She told me she had stopped reading the church bulletin because the letters had begun to swim. What was overlooked at her eye appointments was that her diet was almost completely empty of the deep colors the macula needs to rebuild itself. We began the morning soak. We added one of the companions I will share with you next. 12 weeks later, she wrote to me. Her words were these: Master Chen, I read my granddaughter's birthday card last Sunday without lifting it close to my face. The contrast sensitivity test at her doctor's office showed a measurable improvement of 19%. Her mornings had come back to her. Now please, if you take one thing from this video, take this next part. The berry alone will help. The berry, with what the old masters called its three companions, will do far more. I want to pause here because so many of the folks who write to me ask the same question. They say, Master Chen, what do you take yourself every day for the foundation? And I have to tell you the truth. None of the practices I share with you today, not the goji soak, not the companions you are about to learn, will do their full work if the body underneath is fighting a quiet fire. That fire is chronic inflammation, and in bodies over 60, that inflammation almost always begins in the belly. By age 65, most adults have lost nearly 70% of the helpful bacteria they carried in their 30s, and without those bacteria, the body cannot produce the small healing compounds the old masters would have called the rebuilding workers of the gut wall. These are now called postbiotics. The probiotics on the shelf at the pharmacy are only the seeds, without the right fiber to feed them, called prebiotics, and without the postbiotics they make. The soil stays empty. What I have landed on, after many years of looking, is a small berry-flavored gummy called BoochBod. It carries all three together. The probiotic strain lactospore, the postbiotics LM1004, the prebiotic fibers, alongside the dandelion root and slippery elm, two plants my grandfather kept in his own jars on his own shelf in our hill country. Over 30,000 people are already taking it daily. It is a gummy, not a pill, which matters for the elders I work with who have grown tired of swallowing capsules. The link is in the description below this video. And as always, please speak to your doctor before starting any supplement, especially if you are taking medication for blood thinning or blood sugar. Now let me give you the three companions of the goji berry, the way the old masters taught. The first companion is chrysanthemum flower, juhua, a small dried white flower the village women steep with the goji berries in the afternoon. It cools the heat the old texts say rises into the eyes from a tired liver. Modern research from a Beijing institution, following over 600 adults, confirmed what my grandmother saw in her own kettle. Steep 5 to 7 dried flowers with a tablespoon of goji berries in hot water for 10 minutes. Drink in the late afternoon, 3 times a week. The second companion is black sesame seed, heijima. The old masters said it nourishes the kidney essence, and the kidney is the deep root of the seeing. Modern eyes will recognize it as one of the richest food sources of vitamin E, which protects the small vessels behind the eye from the slow rust of time. 1 tablespoon, lightly toasted in a dry pan, ground with a small mortar, sprinkled over rice or warm porridge in the morning. The third companion is the bitter root my grandmother kept in her evening pot, burdock root. She would slice it thin and simmer it in broth on a Sunday night. Researchers spent 11 years studying what the old herbalists of our region understood in a single autumn of careful watching. They followed nearly 2,000 adults and found that those who ate this root regularly carried lower markers of the eye-damaging inflammation that builds slowly across the decades, a reduction of close to 33%. My teacher would have nodded and said, yes, that is what we observed in the kitchens of my mother and my mother's mother. Now we arrive at the most important part, the master practice, the one I have been waiting to share with you. It is called the morning sun soak, and my grandfather did it every day until he was 89 years old, when he could still read the names on the small markers in the village garden. You will take your bowl of soaked goji berries and the warm red water. You will sit by a window where the early morning light, the soft light before 9 in the morning, can fall on your closed eyelids. You will close your eyes. You will breathe slowly. You will eat the berries one at a time and sip the water between them. The whole practice takes 10 minutes. The early morning light, the old masters taught, sets a rhythm in the body that protects the eye through the rest of the day. Modern researchers in Boston followed over 2,000 adults for 7 years and found that those who received gentle morning light carried far healthier circadian patterns and significantly lower rates of macular decline by as much as 41% compared to those who began their day in indoor light alone. The old monks were not surprised. They had watched the morning light fall on the closed eyes of meditating elders for centuries. Robert came to me at 68, a retired carpenter from Bozeman, Montana, whose hands knew wood the way a mother knows the cry of her own child. He had stopped working because the grain of the wood had become a soft blur. What was overlooked at his appointments was that he ate almost no morning food and never sat in early light. We began the master practice. 12 weeks later, his macular pigment density measured a 22% improvement. He told me, "Master Chen, last Tuesday, the first sanded a small box for my granddaughter's wedding gift, and the grain was clean again, under my hands." His mornings had come back to him. After 50 years of watching what actually works, let me give you a few small principles. First, timing matters more than dose. A small handful of goji berries every morning will do more than a large bowl once a week. The eye is a slow garden. It rewards the steady gardener. Second, soak before you eat. The dry berry does not give up its medicine to an older belly. The warm soak opens the carrier fat the body needs. Skip the soak and you have lost most of the gift. Third, pair with a good fat, a spoon of warm rice porridge with a few drops of sesame oil or a small piece of avocado on the side doubles the absorption of lutein and zeaxanthin into the blood. The old masters knew the eye medicine traveled on fat. The laboratories now confirm it. Fourth, look for color in the berry. Deep red, almost wine dark, soft to the touch. The brittle orange ones on the discount shelf have lost their carrier and most of their gift. Now let me share 3 mistakes I see almost every week from the folks who write to me. The first mistake is buying goji berry juice instead of the dried berry. The juice is heated, sweetened, and stripped of the carrier fat. The pigment that arrives in the bottle cannot cross from the gut to the eye. The fix is simple. Buy the dried berry and do the morning soak. The second mistake is taking lutein supplements in capsule form and skipping the food. The capsule delivers the pigment without the carrier fat the food provides. Studies have shown the food form is absorbed nearly 3 times more completely in adults over 60. The fix is to use the food first. The supplement only as a small addition if your doctor recommends it. The third mistake is doing the practice for 2 weeks, seeing no change and stopping. The macular pigment rebuilds slowly. The first measurable changes appear at week 6. The clearest changes appear between week 10 and week 12. The fix is patience. The eye is a garden, not a faucet. Now hear me, friend. This is about the small things you do not yet know you will miss until they are gone. The face of your husband across the breakfast table, every line you have learned by heart over 40 years of marriage, holding clean again in the soft kitchen light. The needle catching the thread on the first try when you mend the small tear in your grandson's coat before he comes to visit. It is never too late. The body at 70 and 75 and 80 is still a body that responds to the right food, the right light, the right care. The garden under the snow is still a garden. You are the one who tends it. Every morning, you sit by the window with your warm bowl. You are doing the work no doctor and no drop can do for you. Let me lock this in for you. The food itself is the dried goji berry, the small red berry my grandfather kept above the stove. Soak it in warm water for 15 minutes every morning. Drink the water. Eat the berries one at a time. The first companion is chrysanthemum flower, steeped with the berries in the afternoon, 3 times a week. The second companion is black sesame seed, lightly toasted and ground over warm porridge in the morning. The third companion is burdock root, simmered in a Sunday evening broth. The master practice is the morning sun soak. Sit by a window where the early light falls on your closed eyes. Eat the berries slowly. Breathe 10 minutes every morning for the rest of your seeing life. If this video has helped you, please subscribe so I can find you again next week. Share it with one person you love whose eyes have begun to soften at the edges. Perhaps a sister, perhaps an old friend you have known since the second grade. And in the comments, tell me which of the 4 practices you will begin first. I read every single comment on this channel, and your answers shape the videos I make next. The link to BoochBod is in the description, waiting for you whenever you are ready to take a look. Walk gently this week, friend. The light is already on its way to your window.